First thing I want to ask you, brother, how did you get started in commercial real estate and what was the biggest challenge you faced early on? I want to elaborate on this question as well because myself, when I think about commercial versus residential, I have this big mental obstacle, a bunch of different legalities, it's a different process, different timeline. How did you get started in this space and what was the biggest challenge versus residential that you face in commercial?
Yeah, because it's actually funny that you say that the more legalities, because honestly, it's a lot less legalities. You don't have NAR to deal with. You don't have a lot of regulation because regulation is all to protect the consumer. When you're dealing with commercial deals, it's like the Wild West. I didn't know that, obviously, getting into the business. But what really transformed my mindset was my first ever commercial deal, which was referred to me. I was doing 100 residential deals a year. Randomly, my friend goes, "Hey, I got a friend of mine who wants to sell his multifamily building." Ended up making over $100,000 on the deal. I had already done several, 2s, 3s, and 4 families. So like doing a larger multifamily. I mean, this was only, I think it was like 16 units.
Okay.
And sold it for 2.6. And seller wanted 2.5, so I made $100,000. And
so it was a wholesale deal?
No, I brokered it. So
okay.
I made my 4 points. And anyways, I got the check and I was like, wow. My average commission check went from which was like $12,000, and all of a sudden I made like 10 times that average check in one deal. And it wasn't that much more complicated. It didn't take infinitely longer. It wasn't like, there's all these incredible hurdles to jump over that everybody thinks in that process.
Okay. So what's that misconception? Like, break this down for us, right? A residential deal, you meet somebody, let's say you're gonna represent a buyer, they're gonna get pre-approved, pre-qualified for a loan. You're gonna go out there, find a property, submit an offer on that property. You go through your inspection, appraisal period, get the loan cleared up, that property closes. What's the key difference from residential to commercial, and simplify that for us if you can?
Yeah, so when you're dealing with commercial, I'll start with the seller side. When you're in residential, you get a seller lead, you want to list that property for sale. First thing you're going to do always, right?
On the market.
You're going to try to, you're going to go to that seller and you're going to be like, hey, what's a good time to meet? Meet with the client, try to pitch a listing, get it on the MLS, hope and price somebody else has a buyer for it, get a property sold, right? In the commercial world, it is 100% about finding good opportunities. Whoever can find the best opportunities, and when I say opportunities, I mean a good priced product in the marketplace. Okay. We're looking for, I am an investor first. My lens is always coming from the perspective of, I want to find the best deals in the marketplace, because the better price that product is, the easier it is for me to sell it and the more money I can make on the deal, right? Because when you have a listing, you're confined to whatever your listing commission is set at, right? You have that listing agent, you have that seller who says, hey, I'm only going to pay you 2%. 4%, 3%, whatever they're going to pay you, 6% if you're lucky. In commercial, you find a deal that's really, really, really well priced. Seller is super motivated. Mm-hmm. I've had deals where I made over 20% because I don't just think like a broker. I think like an investor first, right? And we call it our 4-lens strategy, multi-lens strategy, because listing a property is one option. It's not the only option. The first lens is, at what price can I buy this property at?
Right.
If it doesn't make sense for that, I go to my next lens, which is wholesaling. And obviously in residential, it's more complicated to do that now because of NAR. But we go to that next lens and say hey, is there enough of a delta between what the seller wants and what the buyer's willing to pay to wholesale this? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Next lens, if it doesn't meet that criteria, we go to brokering the deal off market. This is how we, on average, our fees over 5% every single time, right? We're averaging about 5.25% across every single deal we close. Because most of commercial deals are done off market. In the residential world, nothing's done off market.
It doesn't make sense.
No, you would never do that. I would never tell anybody to not list a property for sale, right? And then the very last option, if a seller is still adamant about selling, but he wants to sell for some crazy, ridiculous price, you're like, fine, sure, I'll list it, but that's last.
Really? So it's quite the opposite.
It's exact opposite. Exactly.
Okay, and now residential is a lot of end user retail kind of stuff, a lot of emotion involved with sellers selling a property that they've been in for 20 years. They have a lot of memories. Very tough to separate, logic and emotion. Buying a property, let's say you're raising a family, you want good school zones, good location, different finishes.
Yep.
Commercials, completely logical, right? It's completely numerically based, not emotionally based.
Yeah, it's mainly numbers. If the numbers pencil, the deal makes sense.
And does that make the process, coming from someone that did 100 residential deals a year, does that make the process more straight line?
I'd say it's a lot less stressful. Because in the residential world, someone's like, I don't like the kitchen layout. And you're like, this is the location you like, this is the price, this is this, and all these check boxes. And they're like, yeah, I just don't like the kitchen layout, or I don't like this, or I don't, these small little things.
It's just numbers for...
Yeah, commercial, it's just like the numbers pencil, great, let's do the deal. I'm working on an $8 million deal right now where, the numbers came back and we can't use the second floor like we thought we were going to be able to use the second floor. And then we're going to have to go to get a retrade for $2 million. You think asking for a $20,000 credit in a residential deal is difficult? I'm about to ask for a $2 million credit.
Okay. So this is all very insightful. I want to break this down for our residential realtors watching.
Sure.
How can an agent that's doing, you know, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deals a month residential, how can they tap into commercial to get their feet wet? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, so my typical philosophy is never stop the faucet if it's running, right? Which is you got money coming in. So don't just stop cold turkey and go into the commercial space. That never, ever makes sense. That's never the move. But what is the move is taking 1 day a week at a bare minimum and start prospecting for commercial deals. You can get a software like Reonomy, like CoStar, like CREsync, many different softwares out there. You pull a lead list, and you just prospect, just like you'd be cold calling around like circle prospecting for a neighborhood or expireds or cancels. Very similar script. I have a free script book on my website. You can go download it. It's absolutely free. It's literally exactly what I say. Right? I'd be like, hey, John, I'm calling somebody up. My name is Henry. I'm a local investor in the market, or you say you're a local broker in the market. I was just calling to see if you'd be totally against selling your property. It's like, it's not that complicated, right? It's literally like a circle prospecting script. That's what we do 24/7, 365 across 250,000 cold calls a month is what my team does right now. So that script is very simplistic. The process then becomes complex about what is this property actually evaluated at.
Okay.
So it's the call is not the difficult part, right?
Okay.
The difficult part is now evaluating this asset and
Underwriting
actually
the deal.
Yeah, underwriting the deal, understanding the process, negotiating, also working with the buyer to understand like what their criteria is like. It's not as simple as, like, oh, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in this location. Can you find it for me? Me and my wife Sally want to go buy a house. It's not like that. I have guys who want to make a 20% internal rate of return. I have guys who want to make 12% cash on cash return. If you don't understand how to even calculate that, you're going to be left in the dust.
I feel like that's what made me hesitant to ever transition to commercial. And I feel like that's what makes other people hesitant. Is that information, cash on cash, cap rates, all that kind of.
But think about it like this. An agent who never gets into commercial real estate is like an agent who just gets stuck renting properties for the rest of their life. Imagine you just were a rental agent. I don't care if you're in Manhattan, Miami, LA, or any place around the world. Imagine only understanding the world of rentals and then never selling a residential house. And then like one person finally shares with you the idea, hey, did you ever know you could sell this? Like, oh, wow, instead of making a few $1,000s, I can make 10 grand or 15 or 20 grand, right? It's the same thing for commercial. It's not infinitely more complex. Like thankfully I happen to do well in math, so it kind of corresponds to now. I'm a 2-time college dropout. It's not like you need a lot of smarts. If it, like I'm not a rocket scientist here,
Right, because that was my aha moment. My first 13 months in real estate, I did straight rentals, making 4 to 6 grand a month. Closed my first sale. Made the same thing that I would make in 10 rentals.
Exactly.
And I said, I'm never going to do a rental again. I'll help service my clients, etc. You're saying that's the same feeling when you close your first.
Literally the same exact feeling
deal.
I had when it was commercial. Now I couldn't stop and just say I'm never going to do a rental again or never sale again.
Right.
But
are you still doing residential or you're strictly doing
everything I do I refer out? I'll take a 75% referral fee. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
75 you?
Yeah.
Let's say, the cold calling, great, get your script book. How do you go then? What's the next step into learning commercial? Is it learning how to look at properties, underwrite properties?
Yeah.
What are some tools that you use that can make it simple for a realtor that's watching right now, it's residential, that wants to open that avenue up for commercial? What's the simplest way to start understanding the lingo and the terminology? Because it is different.
For sure.
It's going to be different.
Yeah, look, number one is it's deal by deal. A lot of this game is deal by deal, but just to give you really quick fundamentals, one, pick a niche to start, right?
So what's a niche within the commercial space?
An asset class that you can somewhat understand, and most of the time I recommend a residential agent gets into multifamily. Smaller multis. Start selling, instead of selling 2 families and single families, right, up to 4 units.
Okay.
Start selling 5s, 8s, 10s, right? I have a 6 family right now. Think about how crazy this is. I have a 6 family right now. Seller wants to net $800,000.
Okay.
An average real estate agent would go to that seller let's just say it's even a 2 family mentally. A normal realtor will go to that individual, run the numbers and say, hey, let's list it for X because that's what it could be listed for on the market, right? I only see it from the lens of like listing the property for sale. I know this property's worth at least $1 million. So I'm going to lock the deal in a contract for $800,000 with the seller. I'm the buyer. And I have a buyer for $1 million. So I'm going to wholesale. I'm going to double close on this deal. I'm going to lock it up for $800,000 and I'm going to flip it for $1 million and never actually take ownership in this deal for more than 15 minutes. If you do $200,000 in a spread, okay, minus closing costs, sure, maybe I'll make $170. I'll make $170,000 on a deal that's $800,000. An average realtor will look at this deal and make 2%. They'll make $16,000 on this deal. I'm going to make $160, $170. This is what I meant by making 20% fees. But they don't think like that. They just think straight to listings. If you're getting started, the fundamentals, if you're in a residential agent, start looking into smaller multifamily. It's probably the easiest way to just kind of get a quick gauge because you understand 2 families. Like most people understanding a 2 family, when you have now 8 units or 16 units, it's not infinitely more complex.
You got to look at rental rates,
Yeah, exactly.
condition of the property.
Yeah, you start reading P&Ls. Like you look, you're going to have an income, right? Like, let's take this deal as an example. You're going to take a multifamily property. You're going to ask them, which is all in the script book, literally tells you exactly what questions to ask, okay? You're literally just going to ask them, like, just out of curiosity, what is the total rent, right? What do you make on an average monthly basis? So he says, I'm making 10 grand a month. Okay, cool. Now you do 10 grand a month times 12 is 120 grand a year. 120 grand a year. Now he says, like, okay, what are your expenses? You'll ask him, what is your expenses? You say, I pay for taxes, insurance. Maybe he pays for water, because most of the time water is not separate,
right,
especially in older properties, right? Maybe the tenants pay electric and gas, and then the guy will pay for some maintenance, and then you calculate out some expenses, right? So he has 120 grand in gross income. He gives you all the expenses. By the way, never ever trust. It's verify always, right? What is the saying? Trust but verify or something.
Right.
Always verify that they're 100% accurate. I've had people say, like, oh yeah, I only pay for taxes and insurance, or I only pay for taxes, they pay for everything else, and it's just not accurate. Always verify. But once you get the numbers and you do a quick calculation, you're like, oh, okay, based on this income, the net operating income, which is just your gross income minus your expenses, you have a net income, right? Just like running a business. And then you take a multiple, or you can call it a cap rate, right? Which is just basically a fancy way of saying, how fast can I recoup my money? So buying a 10 cap, which would be a wonderful deal, by the way. If you have 10 caps, please message me. But if you find a deal that's a 10 cap, which is basically the income, net operating income is 100 grand, and they will sell it for $1 million. That's 10 times, or it takes you 10 years to make your money back. If you buy a 5 cap, which is 20 times, right? It's a 5% rate of return on a property, right? Which basically means if they want $1 million, you're making 50 grand a year.
Okay.
So $50,000 net operating income a year. They want $1 million. That's 5% of $1 million.
Okay.
I'm making 5% on my money if I bought it in cash.
It'd take you 20
right?
years to
and it would make you it'd take you 20 years to recoup your money.
Is that a good investment?
It depends. Can I take 50 grand a year to 200 grand a year? Maybe. I would probably buy that if I can do that. But if 50 grand a year can maybe be 60 grand a year, no, absolutely not. Because think about all the options that they have. They have the stock market. They got crypto. You got all these different options. If you're not making a decent rate of return on your investment, what's the point of it? I would definitely just start with from residential agents, get into the multifamily space. Start selling 5 units, start looking at 10 units, 20 units. It's not as complicated as you think. Go meet with an investor, 2 or 3. Some of these softwares will even tell you the people who bought the properties most recently.
And you can just start calling and building that network.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you call up a guy who just bought 3 multifamilies in your town.